right, it is time for another Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast. I am John Kurtz, joined by Aaron Lockett, former K-State and NFL wide receiver. We are talking about a bowl game, K-State taking on LSU, winding down the 2021 season as we are now in 2022. In fact, K-State and LSU are playing the last bowl game. There is, of course, the national championship game, but the next to last college football game of the year will be played between the Wildcats and Tigers, assuming that we do make it to the finish line and this thing gets in, which is something that we will talk about here throughout the show. But as always, if you're going to be enjoying the game on Tuesday night, make sure and do it through our friends at Holiday Distillery and everything that they have to offer. 360 vodka, versatile lineup. You can do whatever you want as far as the cocktails are concerned, whether you're going to be just mixing them up with whatever mixer it is that you roll with, however it is that you tailgate, you can do it. Craft cocktails, infusions, batch drinks, anything that you want. You can get it from 360 Vodka and Holiday Distillery, who are great to us and help support the podcast here. But man, Aaron, it feels like it's been a while since we talked. It feels like it's been a while since we've seen K-State play a football game. It's been over a month, in fact, and a lot has happened between now and then. Unfortunately, it was a pretty disappointing end of the season after K-State had won 4 straight, got to 7-3. Now back-to-back losses and a long period of time to sit there and think about it before you play this game against LSU.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think the bowl game is an opportunity once again for Kansas State to showcase, what they've learned all year. Like, how do we rebound? How do we put it all together? I'm really excited about the opponent. LSU being an SEC team, along with the talent. Understandable, they have some people in the transfer portal. People opted out based on the NFL draft, but they still are a top-tier team with Brian Kelly coming in. So the notoriety is there for University. For us, it's always an opportunity to have a big win. So I think it's important for us to still put it together, but like you said earlier, hopefully we can get to the finish line and get this game going. I know there's they don't have a lot of people on their roster. Obviously, that's not K-State's problem, but if the game is ready to go, I think K-State's ready to tip it off and get busy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the good news would be you lost the game to Texas. That's not a great Texas squad. That was a fairly beleaguered Texas squad. Yeah. LSU's probably in a worse position, and that was a 6-6 team this year. Anyway, this was not a quintessential LSU team by any stretch of the imagination. They're kind of a shell of themselves right now. But, man, I mean, I would just suggest this, and I know a lot of fans were very upset, rightfully so, about the Texas game and how it happened and losing 22-17 and some of the fourth and short calls. But there has been some change that has occurred in the aftermath of that game. Namely, K-State is going to have a new offensive coordinator for the bowl game and for next year. Courtney Messingham was let go. I had actually been pretty much a defender of him throughout the year, and a lot of the numbers would back up that he was doing a decent job, but that game was hard to come back from, some of the fourth and short calls, and there had already been a lot of consternation for fans there, so you're going to get some change. And then I think another thing that may have happened, Aaron, too, was the decision to go to the transfer portal to get a quarterback in Adrian Martinez from Nebraska, who is in the fold now to play next year because, look, Will Howard was 9 of 13. It wasn't like – a performance that was littered with turnovers necessarily, but still just not effective enough moving the ball, I think, for everybody to feel confident. So if you want to spin it positively, that loss against Texas really seemed to ignite some change within the program now.
Yeah. Well, the bowl game is also a time to see what does next year look like, right? And so I think that we understand that, behind Scholar, we just don't have the talent that we've looked for long-term. Opportunities have been given, and it just hasn't materialized the way that we wanted it to. And so bringing in Martinez is one opportunity, but that's not a long-term answer. That's just something to get us plugged in just until we understand who's going to be the next guy in line. And as far as Messingham and Jason Ray, changes were going to have to be made where, not knowing exactly where that was going to take place, but obviously that's where they decided to make the change. We have Deuce, who had a great year. Skylar's done his part when given the opportunity and when he's healthy. And so for the most part, I think the players are there. It's just a matter of putting the system around them long term. And so I think they're looking at further than just this year. Like you said, the loss from Texas is something that is hard to come back from. And so luckily we have one more game left this year and we can get that bad taste out of our mouth. But it's an opportunity for some of these young guys to step up and some of the guys that's been playing consistent to keep that going. And so once again, I'm excited to see what we look like. A month is a long time to prepare, right? And so guys should be ready to go. Injuries should be healed. For the last guys that are seniors or their last rodeo, this is where you put it all out on the line. We played well here in Texas, years ago against A&M. And so I think that we understand what's at stake, even though it doesn't seem like it's a big-time bowl game. It is for Kansas State. It's a chance to beat the SEC, a chance to get 8 wins in a season, an opportunity for us to propel into next year.
Well, that is where I think K-State has all the advantages in the world. I'm not sure that the situation could have worked out much better for K-State than what it is, because you will have the obvious motivation edge. What does this really matter to LSU, a program that 2 years ago not only won the national championship, but may have had the greatest college football team we have ever seen. In doing so, they have a new coach. This is an interim situation. This was already a bad season that they are going to want to forget very, very quickly. There's just not much motivation there. And K-State, obviously no offense intended to the Wildcats, it's not the kind of name that's going to get a team like LSU from the SEC overly excited. Meanwhile, K-State had nobody opt out. Now, granted, not as many NFL prospects as LSU, but everybody wanted to play this game. Skylar Thompson said there was no chance that he was thinking about skipping this game, even though he's Mel Kiper's 10th rated NFL quarterback prospect heading into the draft. Like, everybody's here motivated, ready to play. And now you have an LSU team that, according to the latest reports, only has 39 scholarship players available for this game because of opt-outs, transfers, and COVID, obviously wreaking some havoc within the LSU program as well. That extends to their quarterback. So Garrett Nussmeier, who's a freshman quarterback, he's already played in 4 games. They didn't want to burn his red shirt by playing him in this game, but he's the only scholarship quarterback left. They put in a waiver to the NCAA. That got denied. So who knows what's going to happen at quarterback for LSU. There's talk of a Wildcat QB, like a position player being out there some, and then they have a walk-on. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that in terms of the advantages that you have on K-State's side to not only just get an 8th win on the season, but look, whoever you suit up in LSU uniforms, like pads and the jersey and whatever, it's going to be cool to beat them no matter what the situation actually is here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I got a chance to go see LSU play this year against University of Louisiana Monroe. And so one thing I can tell you about LSU, they are in the SEC. And so when you watch the Alabama-Cincinnati game, one thing you notice within the interior line is the size of Alabama versus the size of Cincinnati. And so when you look at it, Kansas State, obviously, we're bigger than historically that we've been, which is great, right, from a defensive line perspective. But you're still going to have offensive linemen that are massive from LSU. And so the Texas game, they went into the Wildcat and they just ran the ball consistently and ran it down our throat and moved the line of scrimmage. And so that's something that we need to be cognizant about, just to make sure that, hey, they may not have a quarterback that's going to play that's thrown a pass yet in the NCAA, but they can run the ball. And so for us, even though the Ty Davis-Price, their starting running back, has opted out, they still have some top-tier running backs that are going to be able to run the ball. And it doesn't take anything but momentum to get a crowd of group of guys going. And so for us, it's one of those things where we do have to take it seriously, understand, what's at stake and how do we continue to position ourselves. The way that it's looking with 39 players available for LSU to play, then yes, K-State should come out and dominate, right? And so couldn't we put up 50? If so, then we should. And so that's one of those opportunities where can we do what we want to do as a team and not so much play to the level of our competition.
That is, I think K-State will have a huge advantage offensively when they have the ball. Not only is Skylar Thompson back healthy, but you look at the LSU defense. I mean, you mentioned, hey, they lost their leading rusher. The quarterback situation's pretty bleak. But defensively, they've lost their 2 best defensive players. They only have 1 starter likely that's going to be out there in the secondary. So you should have an opportunity to really go after them with your offense here. Now, again, granted, knowing that a lot of these younger players that are going to be playing, I mean, they're all 4- and 5-star recruits, right? Like LSU doesn't recruit anybody else, essentially. And so maybe there is a motivation to, like, hey, I want to go prove to Brian Kelly, to the next coach, that I can really hack it here in getting my chance to go play in the bowl game. Maybe that is actually there. But in terms of just experience and veteran players and presence and just continuity, like guys kind of understanding what the deal is, I mean, K-State will have a massive, massive advantage offensively in that regard.
Yeah, no, you're right. The only thing that LSU has to lean on is talent, right? They hope their talent can help outshine, like you said, the consistency and continuity between players that won't be there, right? They won't have that locker room morale that seems to be present when you have a team that's been together for a long time. But, I'm just weary sometimes, right? It's just the SEC. You just don't know what you're going to get, right? It's like you said, it's a gumbo of players, no pun intended from the LSU side, but that's just talented. Like I said, I've had a chance to watch them play. You've got a couple of seniors on the team that will be playing their hearts out. And so for us, it's just one of those things where can we play consistent? Can we go out there and can we dominate? And then obviously, as you mentioned, a new offensive coordinator, what does that mean for us? Does that mean we're going to run different plays? What's going to be our philosophy run heavy, pass heavy. So it's going to be interesting to see kind of how it all starts out for us.
Yeah, I'm curious for your opinion on that and your take on how do you handle that if you're calling Klein? Because, by all accounts, this seems to be an audition basically for the offensive coordinator for him. And a lot of it, it's not just going to be the game. Chris Kleiman mentioned he's spent a lot of time just hanging around the offense, seeing how Colin's managing things in practice leading up to it. So a lot of the audition really has already taken place. But, you want to see what the result is going to be. And I'm not sure that you could come out and totally – you're not going to come out running 5 wide all the time, right, in the run and shoot or something like that. But you can make some tweaks, and there obviously has been a lot of frustration about the offense. And I think in particular, like some thought here about wide receiver recruiting, and can you make this a little bit more attractive of an offense for receivers, like those types of things I would like to see out of it. How would you handle this kind of opportunity if you are Colin Klein getting your shot to have the keys to the car right now?
Well, I wouldn't go 5 wide the whole game if you want to keep a job, right? I think you've got to find some consistency, what we've done all year. And so, but you've got to put your wrinkle in there because as you mentioned, this is an audition. This is an opportunity for Colin to showcase what he can do as a coach. What I'm really looking for is how does he relate to the players? He's always been with the quarterbacks, and that's been his natural position. And so that communication seems natural. But how do you get the receivers motivated? How do you get the tight ends involved? How do you get the offense going all together? That's going to be a challenge because now you're looking at a coach that now has a bigger scope of responsibilities and has the players bought in. Has there been enough time? And so for Colin, what I want to see is can he string together a 14-play drive if needed, right? Can he make the right call on 3rd down? Does he have that flexibility? Does coach really trust him? Those are going to be moments within the game that you can say, okay, is Colin our guy or do we need to go outside? And so for him, it's a huge game, right? It is more than just an opportunity to play against LSU. This is an opportunity for him to have a pivotal point in his coaching career and maybe solidify that OC job because he's playing as alma mater. He's got the opportunity based on how it's shaken out. And I'm not sure he'll get that chance in other places. And so this is a huge game for Colin, as a coach and as an offensive coordinator to showcase that he can be the man if needed.
So the question that I think naturally comes up is like, he's been a position coach for a while at the college level. How different is it to be calling plays and coordinating the offense and having more of a bigger picture view than just, hey, I'm a quarterback coach and I'm zeroing in on what the quarterbacks are doing? As someone who's obviously been in huddles, been in offenses, how different are those roles and how easy can that cross over?
Well, it's interesting. I go back to when I played, right? That's the easiest for me to relate to. And I remember Ron Hudson being the offensive coordinator, right? And so we had Greg Peterson as the receiver coach and Michael Smith as the running back coach. And obviously you would talk to different positions, but Ron Hudson was the one that would pull everybody together and tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, we're coming to you, right? We're coming backside. Make sure. So it's not only knowing the offense, it's also knowing the personnel, knowing who you can put in positions to be successful. And then it's saying, okay, I trust that you're going to let me do that, right? And so you listen to me. So it's a little bit of a give and take on both sides of it. And so I don't know if Colin's developed those relationships over the season. It's very hard to develop within 3 weeks, right? And so has he had that constant communication with the receivers and with the running backs to where they feel like he can be the man? I don't know that answer, but that's needed in order for him to be successful as a coordinator.
Well, the good news is he'll have a great relationship to work with as far as his quarterback is concerned. Skylar Thompson coming back, all accounts, he seems to be very healthy. In fact, the word out of the press conference earlier this week was that Skylar's as healthy as he's been all season, just having time to sit and let a lot of these injuries heal. He's had multiple throughout this season. So that, I think, is another just massive advantage that K-State has working for it. And, if we're talking about the offense, Aaron, I was watching, and I'm sure you were too, a lot of the college football on New Year's Day. I mean, these promos that are running on ESPN, they're all featuring Deuce Vaughn. He's getting a lot of run, and this is an opportunity where, all of these bowl games have been drawing huge numbers, like TV, huge numbers. You're seeing 2-3 mil, even for relatively blah games. You're probably going to get that once again here. The point I'm getting at is, hey, if Deuce is as good as we all think he is, which I certainly think he is, this is a chance to kind of throw him on the stage of can you get him on the fringe of the Heisman conversation? Just build the hype train for him next year and how important he's going to be for this team.
Yeah, I think Deuce is the guy, right? I think he's the way that K-State continues to rumble and roll. And so for us as an offensive unit and as a team, I think we ride his wave like we've done all year. I don't think we change. We feed him the ball up the middle. You get him the ball on the outside, run him some Texas routes, get him some mixed matches. And I think for us, Kansas State historically hasn't pushed one player based on a Heisman, but I think that if the opportunity is there, it's something we should do, right? I do believe in family first, but I also believe in when you've got a guy like Deuce, that's a rare talent that comes through Kansas State. And so when you have the opportunity to ride that wave and push him, let's do it. And so I think everybody's on board with it. The media loves him, right? He's got a great name, but he's played lights out. Like he's done his part of it. And so looking for him to finish strong and for K-State to put him on the map.
Yeah, still wish that Coach Snyder would have pushed Michael Bishop a little bit more in 1998, for instance. But hey, water under the bridge at this point, I suppose. How much does, I start to look at what has happened here in the last month. Adrian Martinez coming in, which, yes, a one-year Band-Aid, but that's a really talented quarterback if you can hone in some of the turnovers. Eli Huggins, that was a big decision to come back on the defensive line. He's going to stay for another year. Brandon Jennings, K-State just landed, who was arguably the number one linebacker in the transfer portal. I think that was a pretty shocking development that K-State landed him just earlier this week. Basically, what I'm telling you is you talk about Deuce, Felix Anudike, Khalid Duke coming back from injury next year. Like, there are a lot of pieces in place where K-State could make a run. I have a shot to be in that conversation to try and get to Arlington next year if things go well, if they can grab another couple of pieces. But you want the momentum, obviously, from a bowl win to help propel you to that. And look, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But in your estimation, how much value actually is there in winning the game in terms of setting the table for next year?
It's a ton of value. You're rolling into the offseason, right? And so there's no worse way to roll into the offseason than with a bad taste of a loss, right? And this won't be the first loss. It'll be the third loss in a row, right? And so for Kansas State, they need to figure out a way. How do we finish on a winning note? But as you mentioned, Martinez is a Band-Aid, so we do need to find a long-term solution. But ultimately, in the offseason, we've got to throw the ball better, right? That's what we have to do. We have to figure out how do we open up our game. We can have the greatest defense in the world, but if we can't put points on the board consistently in the Big 12, we just won't be competitive. And so we've got to find a way to utilize all of our talented spaces around receivers and tight ends and anybody that can catch the ball. And so I think that's the area of focus for us in the spring, just making sure that we can stretch the field and become that deep threat and that constant, scoring machine when needed. And obviously, like you said, the pieces on defense come in. We've got to make sure they gel together, right? It's nice to bring in talent on paper, but there are no paper champions, right? You got to go out there and you got to make plays. Understand the injuries will happen, which means you got to bring your second and third string up to par, making sure they're ready to go. And so we've always had trouble with depth at Kansas State, just long term, right? And so for us, we've always had a strong 24, maybe 36, but can we get a strong 48, right? That's what's important to us. And I think once you can do that, then you'll start to compete at a level consistently, whether it's the Alabamas or the Georgias, just because they're 1 and 2, but depth seems to be the long-term solution for Kansas State right now.
Well, it'd be nice to see a young guy or two step up in some of those spots. I think of a guy like RJ Garcia at receiver, if you can get him involved. It would be very, very nice. And I'm sure K-State will have some issues. In fact, I've heard just a little bit of talk this week about it sounds like more on the defensive side of the ball. There may be a position group in particular that has been hit with COVID / just some personal issues, and K-State may be a little bit thin there. So it's not going to be a perfect match of K-State at full strength against LSU not. But this is a rare game where you should have a depth advantage most places. And whatever you can do to get guys who are going to be back next year involved, engaged, and make plays here in a bowl game, I think that can definitely help. And you're someone, in your career, I was trying to think of this through my head as you were talking just a second ago. 98, obviously, that was a loss, but I will give you guys a pass for losing the Alamo Bowl because I think it's pretty obvious nobody really wanted to be there to take on Drew Brees at that point. But you won bowl games in 99 and 2000. Right. How much of a difference do you feel like those bowl games made for you guys going into the offseason, the fact that you won those games?
99, we played Tennessee, if I remember correctly. And then I guess 2000 we played Tennessee, right? Yeah, it was 2000 we played Tennessee. That was huge. The Tennessee game was an opportunity for guys going into the senior year. Petey Fagans played extremely well. I remember Scobie had a great game going into his senior year. Rock Cartwright played well. Obviously, Beasley and Quincy played well, but there were a lot of underclassmen that kind of propelled them into that national spotlight going into the next year. And so whether you're a junior, senior, or whoever, it is an opportunity for people to get the next view of who's who, right? If you just take a step back, even the other night, if you watch the Rose Bowl, right? If you hadn't watched Ohio State play and you looked at, their two top receivers that didn't play, the next thing you see is Njinga, right? The receiver that broke the record with 15 catches for 347. He's now on everybody's radar, right? And so it's an opportunity to get that national spotlight, as you talked about. Multi-million people will be watching the game. You never know who's going to see you, right? And so the goal is, as a college athlete, get on the field, make plays when your number is called, and see what you can do. Bowl game is the best time to do it. And so for the underclassmen, I think it's important to make sure that they can get on the field and make plays. And then for those that are seniors, if you're interested in playing at the next level, no better chance than to do it now.
Yeah, and I mean, say what you will about the LSU roster again, but there will be talented guys out there. So if you're on film making plays against guys that are of the caliber, the talent level of what LSU has out there to offer, that's certainly going to help. It is certainly going to help. And I mean, above all else, like you don't get many shots at programs like LSU.
Nope.
I think that's what was fun and cool about the way the bowl selection process kind of worked out. For a long time, it felt like the Cheez-It Bowl was a pretty likely destination. And I think if K-State beats Texas, that may well be what would have happened. And in that game, you would have been playing Clemson. Well, now you got the Texas Bowl and you're playing LSU. These are games that you can't just go out and schedule regularly, right? In fact, this is only the second time K-State has ever played LSU, which surprised me, the first being back in 1980 when K-State was shut out 21-0. But I would have thought they probably played some of the 80s when K-State could just be a bye game and an easy win. They really haven't. So you have to go cherish these kind of opportunities. And I think the players will. Like today, the disparity is so crazy between the SEC and everybody else. We're about to see an all-SEC championship game. You've got a shot to go play a team from the SEC. And that motivation, as you alluded to, worked out pretty well in 2016 when it was K-State taking on Texas A&M and Myles Garrett, who was the presumptive number one pick in the draft coming up after that.
If you think about it, I always think about recruiting, right? I'm always thinking about long-term effects of a game. And so you're going to have some homers that are LSU guys that are sophomores in high school waiting for LSU to play. They always wanted to go to LSU. That's just their niche, right? Now that Brian Kelly's coming in, they still want to go to LSU, right? Because now they've got a great coach coming in. They're going to be watching that game, right? Indirectly, it's an audition for Kansas State for some of those players that may have never seen Kansas State play football, right? All it takes is one showing for them to say, I like Kansas State. I didn't realize Kansas State was that good. Oh, they have a couple of Louisiana players on their team as well, so they do recruit down here. It's just an opportunity to recruit somebody that may not be in your backyard. And so I always think about the recruiting aspect when playing teams like LSU.
Yep, and doubles as a recruiting advantage playing in Texas too. That does not hurt. 8 bowl game for the Wildcats in Texas, the most in history, just now surpassing Arizona for the state in which K-State has played the most bowl games. All right, before we wrap it up, just any final thoughts on the matchup? Again, fingers crossed that we actually get there to the finish line for LSU playing, but it sounds like LSU really wants the check from this bowl game to go through and play, and they're going to try and force it through. Any final thoughts on what you're looking for out of K-State?
You know what? I want to see more turnovers, right? I want to see us take advantage from a defense perspective. Would love to see more interceptions. And then from a wide receiver standpoint, want to see some plays down the field. I want to see some of those big plays, plus 25 yarders. And so I think that's important for us. Once again, it's important for Klein to put some of those plays in and for us to go execute them. But it's an audition for Skyler for the next level, right? Can he make that deep throw down the middle, right? From a receiver standpoint, can somebody step up and be the man going into next year? And then from a defensive perspective, can we take control of the front seven and then get some picks on the back end? I'm looking for us to dominate. And so this will be an opportunity for Kansas State to showcase that they are one of the elite teams in the Big 12, regardless of what the last 2 games look like. I think the talent's there. Now they just got to go out there and put it on the field.
Yeah, it could be a very weird, disjointed looking game if LSU was playing a Wildcat quarterback the whole time, but it's a game that K-State probably should win, frankly, at the end of the day. All right, if you are going to be watching the game, wherever you're watching the game, make sure and stock up on the 360 vodka from Holiday Distillery. Appreciate their help throughout the entire season. We'll be back with a wrap-up show to talk about the bowl game, what happened, and where K-State heads in the offseason going into the 2022 season, of course, coming up as well. But appreciate all the work of Tucker Franklin behind the scenes. For Aaron Lockett, I'm John Kurtz. Thanks for checking out another Lock It Up with Kurtz podcast. Go Cats.